hope you are writing. If you're not writing, make sure you come back to this video anytime somebody offers you an accommodation or says, oh, I have an ideal place for you. Come back to this video because you will need this information. Hey lovely people, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Couscous, and as a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. Thank you so much for the support, the likes, sharing my videos. Thank you so much, all of you. I have been getting lots of Instagram DMs, emails and questions in the comment section about accommodation. Guys, you know I always have your interest at heart, and basically I was a bit busy. I was writing my exams, I was writing my essay because I was rounding up my second semester, and it was really hectic. Like, how I even turn out content every Friday is a miracle in the midst of my exams. Don't you guys just want to give me some thumbs up right now in this channel? Just give this video a thumbs up because I'm bringing you guys accommodation content. Like I already said, throughout this month of June, you're going to be enjoying accommodation content. Like, if you know that you're coming to the UK for your degree, if you're an international student, wherever you're coming from, and you know that you're coming to UK to study in the coming academic year in 2021-2022 academic year, stay hooked to this channel because you got here at the right time. We're going to be talking about the kind of accommodations you should choose, what you should take into consideration when you want to choose an accommodation, a student accommodation, how you should identify the best student accommodation for you. The last video on the channel was did a tour of a student accommodation somewhere. If you haven't watched that video, you need to go and check it out so you have an idea what it is like to live in a student accommodation, or what majority of the student accommodation is like. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys everything you need to take into consideration before you make that choice. I know that lots of property agents would probably be in your DMs and in your WhatsApp group right now telling you, oh, you need to use me to get your accommodation, you need to do this. So many people will be telling you, oh, don't live here, live there, don't live in a student hall, live in a private accommodation. Guys, I am a current student and you can only believe what I tell you. Take my advice, but you're not obliged to actually take my advice because I'm not your official advisor. But because I love you guys on this channel, I always give you how it is, the facts, and then you take the facts and make it what you want to make it, okay? Just use it, compare and contrast the information you're having. Also do your own research as well, because let another person's opinion not be the sole basis for your decision, okay? Whatever information I share here is for you to go and make your own research. If you want me to make the research for you, I'm here. Pay me, I'm gonna do that for you. So basically that's the intro. I think this intro has been very long. That's just because I'm very excited. I just rounded up my second term, and going forward I'm going to be focused on my dissertation. I was very busy writing exams, writing essays, and still turning out content. So before we get started on this video, do give this video a thumbs up. If you know anybody that's going to resume 2021 academic session, you need to forward this video to them because they need it. Like, you cannot just decide on accommodation. It is a place that you're going to stay for at least 1 year if you're a master's student, and at least 3 years if you're an undergraduate student. So you cannot make the mistake to just go just anywhere and take anywhere, and then you get into the place and you can't come out, because most of the student accommodation contracts come with 12 months contracts. You cannot back out. If you want to back out, you have to find someone to replace you. So which is why you need to take lots and lots of things into consideration. So I think I've been talking too much, so let's get into this video. So the first thing you should consider is your budget. What do you think you can afford? So basically here in UK, so there's a weekly charge or weekly amount for the accommodation, whether it is a private accommodation, whether it is in a student or university halls. it is weekly. So for instance, the last video I did a tour of was about £85 per week. That was not in London, guys. That was not in London. That accommodation was in Sheffield, but it's a Unite student accommodation, which is everywhere in the UK. So maybe you just check your location, your school, and check if you have if they have an accommodation near you. But basically, I think most of the accommodation looks like what I showed you, and that one was £85 per week. So you're going to use that to calculate for 1 month and then for 12 months, depending on how long you're going to stay in the UK or how long you want to stay in that particular accommodation. Okay, so your budget should be able to guide you into determining the kind of accommodation you should start searching for. Don't bother going to stress yourself looking for apartments that are not in your budget. You only get frustrated. Maybe you've seen that this accommodation is £200 per week, and you know that yourself, deep down, you can only afford an accommodation of £150 per week. Don't bother looking, because if you look at it and you see, oh my god, it's so lovely, you would start being drawn to it, and before you know it, you go and commit into something that you end up regretting later. Because I have heard lots of students currently who have regretted their choice of accommodation, especially with the realities of COVID and everything. So the good news is things are beginning to open up, so I guess that you guys are going to have more fun, more social life more than us, because we were basically in lockdown and having to study virtually. And this third term, people are returning to school, people are returning to campus, almost everything is open. So that's it for your budget. Make sure that you identify, you know what your budget is. I don't think I want to disclose how much my accommodation is, but definitely if you guys ask me, I'm going to do that. I'm also going to do a tour of my current accommodation at Queen Mary University of London, so I'm going to do that as well. But if you really want to see that, let me know in the comment section, because I don't want to give out content that you guys don't want. That's going to be a waste of time, and a waste of your own time, and a waste of my own energy. So it is only content that you guys want to see that I am going to make going forward. So if you want to see a tour of my current accommodation in London, let me know in the comment section. If you want to know how much it is, let me also know in the comment section, and I will do that just for you guys. So back to the budget. Once you are able to identify your budget, you have to ask yourself, is it going to be my entire budget? Is it going to include bills, or is it going to exclude bills? Because most of the accommodations here, it is either bills included or bills not included. And when you go to, or when you approach any property agent, or when you see any property maybe online or any listing, and you check the description, you're definitely going to see whether the amount that is stated there is inclusive of bills or exclusive. Usually, most of the student accommodation, most of the university halls are always bills inclusive. So that means if the accommodation is £85 per week, it means it's inclusive of bills. That is what I know about university owned student accommodations. But we also have privately owned student accommodations, which for instance is the Unite homes that I showed you, and a couple of other ones. And then we also have private apartments, private flats. Okay, if you want to live away from students, you want your own private accommodation, private flats, then it is the same thing. You have to determine, is it bills inclusive or is it excluded? So it means that if it is not going to be bills inclusive, it should naturally be cheaper than what the accommodation that is inclusive of bills should be. For instance, if your total budget for a month for accommodation is £500, that means you should necessarily look for an accommodation that is bills inclusive for that amount. So let's say you find an accommodation that you really love but is without bills, then you should aim at getting it for at least £400, because you're definitely going to spend up to £100 for your bills. You're going to pay for gas, electricity, internet, and all of that. And then there are some accommodation that comes with part of the bills and not all. So whatever you're doing, whatever research, make sure you focus on your budget and what is going to get for you, and whether it is bills inclusive or not inclusive. So that's it for your budget. Let's move on to the next point. Option. The next thing you have to take into consideration is, do you want to stay in a student hall, in a university owned student accommodation, or do you want to stay in a privately owned student accommodation, or do you want to stay like I already said, in a private flat, you know, outside school, just a normal flat in the streets of London. Not in the streets of London, like a normal home, a flat, okay? So you have to decide that. But before you make that decision, you also have to take different things into consideration, okay? I don't think I'm going to make say much about that in this video because we already have a lot to talk about. So I think I'm going to probably make another video about it if you guys want it. If you want me to talk about what you should take into consideration to determine if you should take a student hall or a private flat, let me know, okay? Let me know in the comment section and I'll do just that for you guys. So when you are able to decide where you want to live, it's going to guide you. This is because there's so many things. There are disparities everywhere. For instance, there are certain bills you pay when you are in a private accommodation that you wouldn't pay in a student hall. Also, some private accommodations may not be furnished. For instance, you may get a flat, maybe very beautiful location, cheap, but it's not furnished. It doesn't have a bed. Maybe the kitchen is not furnished. The lounge is not furnished. It's an empty apartment, and then you would basically fill the place with your stuff. That means it's going to be way cheaper. So let's do it again. For instance, your budget is £500 a month. So an accommodation that is well furnished, bills inclusive, for the month, that's your budget, £500. So if you see an accommodation that is without bills, at least aim for £400. So that £100 allowance is for your bills. If you see an accommodation that is not furnished, aim for £250 or less, because you have to furnish it, bring in your bread. But I must say that very few accommodations or very few apartments are usually not furnished, and those ones are usually for families. And also, if you're a student and you just want maybe one room, standard room, you know, one bedroom flat, please look for the one that is furnished, because you don't want that stress, okay? And then the student halls are usually furnished. You always have your bed, your, you know, cabinets and everything. Your kitchen is everything is always provided for in student accommodation, and is usually bills inclusive. So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. Usually there are very different rules in this apartments and student accommodation as well. For instance, where I live, there is no smoking, there are no pets allowed, you know, and then because of the COVID, there were no guests allowed into my accommodation because of COVID restrictions. I want to believe that going forward, maybe later in the year, they would open that up for guests to come in, because I think the main guest policy was guests could come in but they couldn't sleep over. But because of COVID, guests were not allowed at all. So imagine that you're living in the student halls and, you know, you have to take those rules into consideration. What other rules could you have? Maybe somebody could say no partying. For some private accommodations, I definitely know a lot of private apartments that would say no partying. No, I don't think private accommodations will restrict you on guests, but usually no pets, no party, no smoking, and all of that. So if you do any of those things, or you want to do any of those things, you have to take into consideration which apartment is going to be in your favor, okay? That's another thing you need to take into consideration. This one, location. Location is very important. Before I talk more about location, let me just list the things you take into consideration, you know, about the location of where you decide to stay. It should be at least close to school. Even if it's not close to school, at least 30 to 1 hour away from school. Anything outside 1 hour away from school, that means you don't want to be going to school frequently. If you're going to school like twice a week, that's fine. Even if it's 3 times a week, that's fine. But if you know you're going to be regular in school, like I said, everything is open now, so it's not going to be all virtual like you know. So if you're going to be going to school frequently, even if you don't have lectures, you could want to visit the library. That's a lot of money for you. If you have to, for instance, if you're in London and you have to travel from zone 3 to zone 1, if your school is in zone 1, you're gonna spend money. So you have to look for an accommodation that is not so far from your school, preferably near your school, okay? Where my accommodation is 20 minutes away from Queen Mary, the main campus, but that is not my campus. My campus is at Lincoln Innsfield, which is central London. It is 20 minutes away, about 5 train stops, which is not It's not even up to 30 minutes, I'll still get to school. So I beg you in God's name, do not go and get an accommodation that is 1 hour away. Although I can't enforce this opinion on you, but I'm just looking out for your interest, okay? I'm sure that you will find lots of options around your school, and even if not so close to school, just reasonable distance. Also, it will be preferable if you get an accommodation that's not so far from malls, the train station, the tube station, the bus station, so you don't have to work so much when you come back from wherever you went to. You don't have to work so much, especially if you go shopping and you have heavy bags and you drop at the train station. The distance you want to cover shouldn't be so long, so you don't have to be so stressed. So take all those things into consideration. So that's it, guys. We've come to the end of this video, but I still have a lot of other things to talk about accommodation. Meanwhile, just drop your questions in the comment section so that I can address them in the next video if you want me to. And if you want me to, highlight other things about my accommodation, if you want to see the tour of my accommodation, if you want me to talk about the differences in private accommodation and university halls, let me know as well, and how exactly you should get your accommodation. So like I said, there's so many contents about accommodation that I may not exhaust in this video. This video is already too long, so I have to end it here. Thank you so much for staying to the end. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, share this video to all those you know that this content is going to help. Share this channel on your timeline, support this channel, so that the content can get to more people and more people can get access to this information. So that's it basically. I'll catch you guys in my next video. Keep watching other videos of mine. Bye.